All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep, really deep, into the FAPI Marketing Framework.
Ooh, deep dive time.
Yeah, but with a bit of a twist this time.
Okay, I like twists.
We've definitely talked about FAPI a lot on the show.
Yeah, we have.
But this time, I want to look at it through a specific lens, the lens of systems thinking.
Interesting.
So I was reading this article the other day, and it really got me thinking about how much FAPI is really all about systems thinking.
That is intriguing.
Like really a systems thinking methodology for marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've always sort of appreciated how holistic FAPI is,
For sure.
but I never really explicitly thought of it as systems thinking.
Yeah, I get that.
So I'm super curious to dive into this and see what we uncover.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so before we get too far, let's do a super quick recap of FAPI for anyone who might be new to the framework.
Sounds good.
So FAPI, it stands for Frame, Architecture, Production, and Insights.
4 key modules,
Right?
yeah?
And it's really the way those modules interact that makes the whole thing tick.
Absolutely.
Now, this is where that whole systems thinking element really starts to shine through.
Okay, I'm listening.
So the article I was reading, they made this point that each of those FAPI modules is like a gear in a big complex machine.
Okay, I like that analogy.
And so you have one gear turning, and it sets all the others in motion,
Well,
right?
it makes sense.
But then they said if there's like a problem with just one gear, it can totally mess up the whole system.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
They had this really great example in there.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
So they talked about, like, imagine there's a delay in the Insights module.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to using, like, outdated data in the Frame module.
Ooh, that's not good.
Right. And they said that could totally derail a whole campaign launch.
Oh, yeah, that would be a disaster.
And it really highlights how important feedback loops are in systems thinking.
Yeah, I see that.
Like one action in one part of the system, it can have these consequences somewhere else, but they might not happen right away.
Yeah, those delayed consequences, those can really sneak up on you.
They really can. It's kind of scary.
It is.
You know, it reminds me of that time a while back we were talking about that marketing campaign that totally flopped.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
And it was because they used, like, really old market research data when they were planning the whole thing.
Yeah.
They didn't consider how much consumer behavior had changed in the meantime.
Classic example of an overlooked feedback loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show how easy it is to fall into that trap if you're not thinking systematically.
You really have to be paying attention to the whole system, not just the individual parts.
Absolutely.
The article also drew this really fascinating parallel between FAQI's visual model and this concept of partitive hierarchies in systems thinking.
Okay, now you have to break that down for me. Partitive hierarchies.
Sure, it sounds kind of intimidating, right?
A little bit.
But it's actually simpler than it sounds.
Okay, good.
So basically, it's this idea that a system, any system, is made up of smaller subsystems. And those subsystems are made up of even smaller parts, and so on.
Ah, I see.
It's like those Russian nesting dolls, you know?
Yeah, where each one has a smaller one inside.
Exactly. So with FAPI, each module, it's like one of those dolls.
I love that.
So each module is a system in itself.
Right.
But it's also just one part of a much larger system, which is like your whole marketing strategy.
Got it.
And the article really emphasized how recognizing that whole hierarchy, that's what helps us understand how changes at one level.
Like changing one little thing.
Yeah, it can have this cascade effect throughout the whole system.
Wow.
So it's not just about optimizing those individual modules in isolation.
Right, it's all connected.
It's about making sure the whole thing is working together smoothly and efficiently.
That makes a lot of sense.
And, it reminds me of that part in the FAPI guidebook where they compare each module to a vital organ in the body.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I think the frame is the brain, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And then architecture is like the nervous system.
And production is the muscles.
Exactly. And then, of course, insights is the sensory system, taking in all that information.
So we need all of those working together, just like we need our organs working together.
Exactly. If one part isn't functioning properly, it can throw the whole system off balance.
Like if you have a heart condition.
Right. It can affect your lungs and your brain.
So it's the same with our marketing strategy.
Yeah. A weakness in your production module could totally impact your frame and architecture.
It's all connected.
It really is. This whole systems thinking approach, it forces us to see the bigger picture and to really think about those long-term consequences of our decisions.
I like that.
It's not just about quick fixes or short-term gains.
It's about building a sustainable and resilient marketing system.
Exactly. And that's where FAPI, viewed through this systems thinking lens, it becomes incredibly adaptable.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So traditional marketing frameworks, they can be really rigid,
It can be, yeah.
and they really struggle to keep up with all the change that's constantly happening.
Especially these days. Everything's changing so fast.
It is. But FATI, with its emphasis on feedback loops and continuous improvement, it's designed to evolve and adapt.
It's like it has that built-in flexibility.
Exactly. And the guidebook has a great example of this.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
Do you remember that case study about that yoga studio?
The one that went all digital, yeah.
Yes. They went from relying on in-person classes and word of mouth.
Which was basically all they were doing before.
Yeah. And in just a few months, they built this thriving online presence.
And it was all because of FAPI.
They used it as a dynamic system, They were constantly gathering data,
Analyzing their results.
making adjustments along the way.
They weren't afraid to experiment and pivot.
And that's a huge takeaway for our listeners.
For sure.
Thinking of FAPI as a system means moving beyond those static plans
Right.
and embracing flexibility and continuous learning.
Always be learning.
Always be learning, exactly.
So this is kind of a random thought, but it makes me think of that section in the article about scarcity mindset and tunnel vision.
Oh, that's an important point.
They were warning against those, right?
They were. So a scarcity mindset, that can lead marketers to just focus on short-term gains.
The quick wins.
Exactly. And then tunnel vision, that stops them from seeing the bigger picture.
And from adapting to change.
Right. But FAPI, it helps us avoid those traps.
How so?
Well, it forces us to step back and look at the whole system.
To see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And then we can make decisions based on data and feedback.
Not just our gut feeling.
It encourages us to stay curious
Like that.
and to see change as an opportunity, not a threat.
It's about cultivating that mindset of abundance and possibility.
Exactly. And FAPI gives us the structure to explore those possibilities in a strategic and data-driven way.
Awesome. Well, this has been a really great overview of FAPI through that systems thinking lens.
It's been fun.
And I think we've laid a really solid foundation for the rest of our deep dive.
I agree. And I'm excited to see where we go from here.
Me too.
Welcome back to our depth dive. We're looking at FAPI as a systems thinking methodology for marketing.
Yeah, it's been really interesting so far.
It has.
We've covered so much already.
Yeah, we have.
All about that interconnectedness.
And how adaptable it can be.
Yeah, and all those feedback loops.
Oh, yeah, those are key.
But there's another piece of this whole FAPI puzzle that really fits perfectly with systems thinking.
What's that?
It's all about the people.
Ah, the human element.
Exactly.
Yeah.
FAPI isn't just about, the tools and processes and all that.
Right.
It's about the people who are actually making it all happen.
The ones turning the gears.
Exactly. And the article we were talking about before, it really highlighted this.
Yeah.
It talked about how FAPI recognizes how important teams are.
Uh-huh.
And how the dynamics of those teams really affect the whole marketing system.
That makes sense.
It's like you could have the best framework in the world,
Yeah.
but if your team isn't functioning well, it's not going to work.
You need all the parts working together.
Exactly. And they had this really cool analogy in the article to illustrate this whole team aspect.
Oh, what was it?
They talked about a dragon boat racing team.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Me too. It's such a good way to visualize it.
It really captures that whole essence of teamwork.
And how everyone has to be in sync.
Yeah, you need that synchronized effort.
So for anyone who hasn't read the FAPI guidebook,
Uh-huh.
they describe how in dragon boat racing, the success of the whole team,
The whole boat.
yeah, it depends not just on each individual paddler doing their best,
Right.
but on them all being synchronized and working together seamlessly.
Like one giant organism.
Exactly. And it's the same with marketing teams.
For sure.
A really high-performing marketing team, they need a shared vision.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has to be on the same page.
And they need to know what their role is in the system.
Exactly. And you know what? The guidebook actually goes a step further with this.
Really? How so?
They outline specific FAPI rituals,
Rituals. Okay.
and these rituals are designed to actually foster that teamwork and collaboration.
Oh, interesting.
So they're like structured activities
Mm.
that create these feedback loops within the team itself.
Ah, so it's systems thinking applied to the team as well.
Exactly. And it's all about promoting alignment and continuous improvement.
I love that.
So one example they give is having daily stand-up meetings.
Oh, yeah, like a quick check-in.
Exactly. And in those meetings, everyone shares updates on their progress. They talk about any roadblocks they're hitting.
And they can offer support to each other.
Right. And it helps break down those silos that can sometimes happen in teams.
Yeah, when people get stuck in their own little world.
It ensures everyone's on the same page, and it promotes that feeling of shared ownership over the whole marketing strategy.
I can see how that would be really powerful.
It is. And it reminds me of times in my own career where things have gone wrong
Yeah.
just because of a lack of communication.
Or because people didn't really understand the bigger picture.
Exactly. But these FAPI rituals, I think they can really make a difference.
Yeah, it's about creating that culture of transparency and collaboration.
And that continuous feedback is so important.
So if you're out there listening and you're leading a marketing team,
Or even if you're just part of a team.
definitely check out that section on rituals in the FAPI guidebook.
Yeah, it's full of practical advice.
And things you can actually start doing right away.
to improve your team's performance and make it more collaborative.
Awesome.
Okay, so we've talked about teamwork and rituals, but now I want to shift gears a little bit
Okay, where are we headed?
to another key aspect of FAPI that really aligns with systems thinking.
What's that?
It's all about data and insights.
The fuel of the system.
Exactly. This is where that insights module really shines.
So true.
And the article we were talking about, it made this point that the insights module, it reflects this key principle of systems thinking,
Which is?
using data analysis and feedback loops to drive continuous improvement.
Makes sense. You got to measure to manage, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where FAPI really stands out as a data-driven framework.
It's not just about collecting data for the sake of it.
No, it's about using that data to understand how all the different parts of your marketing system are interacting.
And then finding ways to make the whole thing work better.
Exactly. And the FAPI guidebook, they give some really great examples of specific metrics and KPIs
Oh, the good old KPIs.
that marketers can use to track their progress and make decisions.
So, like, what kind of metrics are we talking about?
Well, they talk a lot about monitoring things like customer acquisition cost,
Okay, that's a big one.
conversion rates,
Uh-huh.
and customer lifetime value.
Yeah, all those juicy metrics.
And those metrics, they give you these valuable insights into how healthy your marketing system is.
And they can help you spot areas where you might need to make some tweaks.
Exactly. But there's a catch, right?
What's that?
Data is only as good as the insights you can actually get from it.
Oh, for sure. You can have mountains of data and still be clueless.
Totally. So the real power of FAPI's Insights module is that it helps you transform that raw data.
Into actionable knowledge.
Exactly. And the guidebook, they really emphasize this point.
Yeah.
It's not just about measuring results, it's about understanding why you're getting those results.
The why behind the what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for example, let's say you notice a drop in your conversion rate.
Uh-oh, that's never good.
No, it's not. But instead of just panicking, the Insights module encourages you to dig deeper.
And ask, why is this happening?
Right. So you start asking questions like, is it a problem with my website design?
Or maybe your messaging isn't quite right.
It could be your targeting, you're not reaching the right people.
So many possibilities.
And by analyzing the data through that systems thinking lens
you can start to pinpoint the root cause of the problem
and come up with a solution that actually addresses that underlying issue.
instead of just treating the symptoms.
Exactly. And this is where that whole iterative nature of FAPI comes in.
Oh yeah, the constant tweaking and refining.
It's not about setting a plan in stone and never deviating from it.
Right.
It's about constantly gathering feedback
Analyzing the data.
and making adjustments along the way.
So that Insights module, it's really the fuel for that whole continuous improvement cycle.
It really is.
And it's that adaptability that makes FAPI such a powerful tool for navigating this crazy world of marketing.
It's like a compass and a map, all in one.
I like that.
So for all of you listening out there,
Yeah.
if you're thinking, how do I actually apply this data-driven approach in my own work?
Yeah, good question.
Well, I think a good place to start is by identifying those key metrics that really matter to your business goals.
The ones that actually move the needle.
Exactly. Then you need to set up a system for tracking those metrics.
And actually looking at the data regularly.
Right, not just letting it sit there gathering dust.
And most importantly, use those insights to make decisions.
To actually change your marketing strategy.
Because remember, FAPI is all about continuous learning and improvement.
And the Insights module gives you that framework for doing that in a data-driven and systematic way.
Love it.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to talk about one potential pitfall that the article mentioned.
Uh-oh, a pitfall.
Yeah, it's the risk of getting so caught up in the mechanics of the framework.
That you lose sight of the bigger picture.
Exactly. FAPI has a lot of moving parts, right?
It does. Lots of processes, rituals, documentation.
And it's easy to get bogged down in all of that, especially if you're new to it.
Yeah, information overload.
And if we're not careful, we can spend so much time managing the process.
That we forget about the actual results we're trying to achieve.
It's like that saying, can't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. So how do we strike that balance?
Good question.
How do we use the framework as a guide without becoming a slave to it?
I think the key is remembering that FAPI is a framework, not a set of rules.
It's a tool, not a rule book.
Exactly. It's meant to be adapted and tailored to your specific needs.
And your context.
Like any systems thinking approach, you have to be aware of the potential downsides.
And adjust accordingly.
And the article actually had some really good tips for avoiding this pitfall.
Oh, yeah. What were they?
They said start small.
Don't try to do everything at once.
Exactly. Focus on just one module at a time.
Baby steps.
And gradually build up your FAPI system as your team gets more comfortable with it.
Yeah, build that confidence slowly.
They also said it's super important to review your processes regularly.
And make adjustments if they're not working.
It's all about finding what works best for your team and your organization.
Not just blindly following a bunch of steps.
And always remembering that the ultimate goal
is to create a marketing system that's effective and sustainable.
One that can adapt and thrive
Mm-hmm.
in this ever-changing world of marketing.
Sounds good to me.
So I think that's a good place to pause for now.
Yeah, take a breather.
But we're not done yet.
More to come.
There's still one more super important aspect of FAPI that we need to dig into.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
It's all about how FAPI impacts marketing teams and how it can help develop new skills.
That sounds fascinating. I can't wait to hear more.
Well, stay tuned because we're going to dive into all of that in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm ready.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. We're wrapping up our deep dive into FAPI.
Looking at it through that systems thinking lens.
Exactly. And, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
We talked about how all the different FAPI modules are interconnected.
Like the gears in a machine.
Right. And the importance of those data feedback loops.
For making sure everything's running smoothly.
Yeah. And we even touched on how FAPI can affect team dynamics.
And help people develop new skills.
But now I want to get to something that's been on my mind.
Okay, what's that?
It's about the potential downsides of FAPI.
Ah, you're thinking about those limitations.
Yeah, because, no framework is perfect.
That's true.
And I'm really curious about those potential pitfalls.
Especially from a systems thinking perspective.
Exactly, because sometimes when you look at things as a system,
you can see those unintended consequences.
right. And the article we've been discussing, it actually mentioned a few of those potential downsides.
Worth thinking about.
One that really stood out to me was that risk of over-optimizing.
Oh, yeah. I could see how that could happen.
Like, you know how FAPI is all about using data to make decisions?
Data-driven, for sure.
But sometimes if we get too focused on the data, we can actually lose sight of the bigger picture.
Almost like getting tunnel vision.
Yeah, exactly. We can get so obsessed with tracking all these metrics
and A/B testing every little thing
that we forget about what really matters.
Which is?
The customer experience.
Always going to keep the customer in mind.
Right. Like we might be optimizing all these different parts of our system.
But if the customer's having a bad experience,
it's not going to matter.
It won't matter at all.
And we can also get so caught up in those short-term gains.
The quick wins.
Yeah, that we neglect those long-term brand-building efforts.
So it's like winning the battle, but losing the war.
Exactly. So yeah, data is important.
Crucial even.
But we got to use it wisely.
And not let it overshadow those other essential parts of marketing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And another potential downside the article brought up was this idea that FAPI can sometimes create a culture of process over creativity.
Oh, yeah. I can see that too.
Like, FAPI is big on structured processes, rituals, documentation, all that.
It's very organized.
It is. And for some teams, that can feel kind of stifling.
Especially if they're used to being more spontaneous.
Or if they really thrive on experimentation.
So if you're not careful, you might accidentally kill that creative spark.
Exactly. Just because you're trying to follow the framework perfectly.
So it's important to strike that balance.
Between structure and flexibility.
Yeah.
Give people the freedom to explore new ideas.
While still staying true to those FAPI principles.
Now, one last thing I wanted to mention about these potential downsides.
What's that?
Is that we can't think of FAPI as like a magic solution.
Right. It's not a silver bullet.
Exactly.
Like, it's not going to magically solve all our marketing problems.
It's a framework, a tool.
A really good one.
But it's still up to us to use it effectively.
And to adapt it to our own unique circumstances.
Because every business is different.
And every marketing challenge is different.
Couldn't agree more.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into FAPI,
it's been quite a journey.
It really has. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that FAPI, when you look at it through that lens of systems thinking,
Mm-hmm.
it gives us a really powerful framework for approaching marketing in this holistic way.
Thinking about all those interconnections.
Exactly. But like
Yeah.
any tool, we got to use it carefully
And thoughtful.
and always be willing to adapt it to our own specific needs.
That's the beauty of systems thinking. It's all about adaptation.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into FAPI.
Always a pleasure.
We hope you learned a thing or two.
And maybe even got inspired to apply some of these ideas to your own marketing. And until next time, keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep marketing smarter.
See you next time.